This is the very beginning of my aero-engined Edwardian project. Sitting up there on the shelf, nice and quietly, was a Liberty V12. The Liberty V12 is in the Roche Schneider chassis. The engine is the restriction because it's so big. What about if I cut this engine in half? The plan would always be to make a new crank as the original V8 was intended. I have found another Liberty engine, another bottom end. Today we're going to get this case chopped up. Just looks perfect. It's a V8 case. I'm so chuffed. Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Thank you so much for joining us again. I'm very pleased to say that we are back in the workshop and working on the Liberty engine once again. We're going to make some progress today. First of all, a big thank you to today's video sponsor, Surfshark. You'll hear more about them later on. I have been shopping and I'm preparing myself for cutting down this engine case. In the last episode, in case you missed it, we stripped down this new bottom end that I've got. I've now got the two bare case halves. I've tried taking them up to the house and pressure washing them. It removed a bit of the sludge, but there is still a lot of built up grease and horrible mess in the case. So before I can even think about chopping or welding or anything, I've got a lot more degreasing to do to try and clean it off, which is what we're going to start with. But in today's episode, we are going to try to weld that little piece of metal back in place. I've got some new welding gas. I've got a couple of options of welding rods. Got everything we need. I've even bought myself some new gloves. If I can successfully weld that web in place, that will confirm enough to me that I can weld the case, which means there's no reason why we can't cut it in half. It's a scary day. It's absolutely chucking it down outside. Spike is here at the top working on the electrics, but I'll show you that later on. For now, let's get some degreaser on this engine case. We've got a lot to do. Grease and dirt and engine oil is the worst enemy for welding, and this aluminium is inevitably quite porous because it's cast. So over the years, all the oil that's been sort of sitting inside of this engine will be inside the metal, and as soon as you start heating it up, it starts coming to the surface, almost like pores of your skin. So the more scrubbing and degreasing and cleaning I can do at this stage, hopefully the better the welding will go. So I've just got quite a strong engine degreaser, giving it a good scrub, and I'll take it back up to the house and give it another pressure wash, and it should remove a bit more of the stubborn grease. I will end up getting the case halves blasted, whether it's vapor, soda, I'm not sure yet how I'm going to do it, but until then, all the grease and oil needs to be removed for that process to work properly. I am absolutely soaked. I've just taken the block back up to the house and pressure washed it again, soaked myself. I'm completely wet through, but the engine now is pretty much as clean as I can get it. It's probably a good time to start trying to clean up the area that I'm going to try and weld. You can see that web and that support rib has snapped off. The goal is to try and weld that back in place. So bear with me, I'll get there. Once it's clean, we can try and fire up the welder. I am just adding a bit of heat to the area that I'm trying to clean in the hope that adding that heat to the metal brings the oils to the surface so I can clean them and remove them from where I'm trying to weld. I'm using the right tool for the job. I'm using a stainless steel wire brush to clean up this engine case, in particular the area that I want to weld. The tiniest contaminant in there will cause huge problems when I'm trying to weld it, and that is the same for your online security. One tiny breach can cause you a whole world of problems. And that's where today's video sponsor comes in, Surfshark. Surfshark is a VPN that basically encrypts your data between your computer and the internet, protecting your personal information. But it's a lot more than that. It feels like so many websites these days require you to input so many of your personal details, your name, address, your email, just to actually browse the website. This increases the risk of your data being leaked and spam-filled inboxes. Surfshark can provide you with alternative email addresses, phone numbers, addresses, everything you need to sign up for these websites without giving out your personal information, and minimize the possibility of getting annoying marketing emails. Use the autofill function with Surfshark to automatically fill out the form, preventing your real information being exposed. I'm so pleased to say that Surfshark have a fantastic offer for viewers of this channel. Go to surfshark.com/DomC or use code DOMC at the checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN for free. The cast material has almost like a grain or a structure. If it's a clean break like this is, I don't want to remove all of that grain structure because it really helps line things up and get them in the right position. But saying that, I do need to knock the corners off because I need to create a V which makes a valley that I can then backfill with the weld. It helps with penetration and helps the weld actually get right into the core of the metal, especially if you're welding both sides. The die grinder is made of a very hard steel, so and it's almost like milling. It's cutting the bits off and not leaving any of the cutter into the aluminium. If I was to use sandpaper, tiny fragments from the sanding discs will get stuck into the aluminium. Cleanliness is key. It's time to fire up the welder. As soon as that arc starts, it will be make or break as to whether we can weld this engine case. If it was a material that didn't want to be welded, if it had a high lead content or I think magnesium, I would know straight away it would, it would do all sorts of horrible things and fizzing and popping and splatting. But it's not. It's looking really good. A huge thank you to Rich for letting us use his X-ray machine. It was so helpful to know what this material is made up of, so I can prepare myself, get the right welding rods, and prepare myself for this moment. And so far, so good. Slow and steady is the answer here. I just need to introduce a lot of heat because as I'm introducing the heat, it's getting sucked out because it's such a big piece of aluminium, and aluminium conducts heat very well. Slow and steady, just trying to tack it into place at the moment. Okay, I will admit it's not the most beautiful weld ever, but it's there, it's on, it's clean, and it's doing its job. I am very, very pleased with that. Welding cast aluminium is very rarely a very neat weld. You're never going to get that nice, neat weld that you'd see on sheet aluminium, but it's strength and structural integrity is what we're going for here, and it's looking good. Now I've got that first tack in place, I can go back in with the die grinder and open out that V a bit more, and then go back in there with the welder and finish committing and weld that all the way along. back in with the die grinder to grind the weld down and just knock the top of it off. I'm still not using an abrasive, a flap wheel, because there's a chance that as I grind through this weld, there may be some porosity and some holes that I need to then grind back and re-weld over the top. So again, I don't want to add any contaminants into the weld at this point. So I'm just using the die grinder until I'm happy that the weld is good. We haven't got any horrible sort of pinholes, and it's looking good. I lift up my welding helmet, lift up my goggles, and all of a sudden it's dark. Winter is well and truly here. I still have very limited power. I've got one plug socket. So I can't run any lights yet, but power from National Grid is coming in. It's on the way. They're literally digging the trench. The wire's being laid next week, so it's happening. Work, unfortunately, on the crankcase is going to have to grind to a halt for the evening, but I'll be back tomorrow. I am going to have to call it a night. It is literally pitch black in here. I can't see what I'm doing, but I'm very pleased to say that I've got the whole day clear tomorrow, so we're going to get this case chopped up. I hope, fingers crossed, if everything goes to plan, I'll be reaching for the angle grinder and chopping this case up. I can't wait. Sorry to interrupt the video, but I have some very exciting news to share with you. I have finally sorted myself out, and the Ranelagh website is now up and running and fully functioning. So sticker packs, the brown keyrings are all in stock. There are some machine parts that are now in stock, the top wheels, the little cradle inserts, and I have had a very limited run of all black keyrings made. They're still made by Steve, Nelson and Forge, completely by hand. Hand stamped, hand cut out, hand stitched. They're a very limited number, but they're on the website now. So this is your chance. Don't say I didn't warn you. I'm hoping to expand the merch side of things very, very soon. I'm working on it, and I have actually got somebody that is helping me with the orders and the shipping and things like that now. So support the channel. Every penny that these produce will go back in to trying to get this Liberty engine running, which I'm sure you will all appreciate. Get your keyrings now. The fact that that has welded so well is absolutely brilliant news. I cannot tell you how excited I am. This has been on my mind for probably over a year now, since I've had this engine and the idea to cut it down to a V8. It really all hinged on, is that case weldable? Is it going to be strong enough? There was every chance that as soon as I'd sort of touched it with the welder, you'd know instantly if it had some horrible metal in it, horrible material that didn't want to weld. But it welded really, really nicely. I wish I could have filmed through my visor so you could see, and I tried to sort of rig something up, but I'm concentrating so much and there's only so much space around where I'm filming. It's quite tight in there where I'm welding. So you'll have to just take my word for it. I've used these new rods, which I've not used before. The welding rods were 4043, absolutely brilliant. I'm so chuffed. I don't know what to say. I have unfortunately got another chunk of that web missing, but I think what I'm going to do is once I've cut the engine block, I can nick a little bit of a web off of another one that's from the scrap section and weld it back into there. A little bit of preheat. I did warm up the case a bit, but I really didn't have to get it that hot. It's such a large, huge volume of aluminium which sucks the heat out of the area so quickly. It took quite a lot of amperage to actually get the weld puddle pulled up, and it just cooled so quickly. So I don't have any worry that anything got too hot that started twisting and distorting stuff, because it just sucked the heat out of it so quickly. And it feels really nice and strong. I'm over the moon. This gives me every confidence now that I can weld the case back together after I've removed 4 cylinders. So let's go in to cutting this engine block. Finally, I know a lot of you don't agree to this, but I'm hoping I'll win you over the process as we develop through. But let me get my crayons and my pens and paper out and talk through the plan, because there's some options now on how we cut this down. So this is a bird's eye view of the top of the engine block. This is a V12, as I've got. These holes are each bore for each piston. These 2 holes here are for cam drives. There's gears and shafts that go through there, so these are essential. These have to stay, and this hole in the middle here is for the generator that goes on there, and below that there's a drive that goes from there down to the water pumps, oil pumps and things like that. So basically this whole half of the engine needs to stay, because there's a lot of good bits here that I need to reuse, so I need this front half. The back half is where the propeller would have come out of usually, and there is on the crank there is a huge bearing here for the amount of of pressures that propeller would have put on this front part of the crank. I'd like to keep that, but importantly, this little bit is a massive bearing at the outside of the crankcase there, and that sets the thrust of the crank, the sort of backwards and forwards movement of the crank. And bearing in mind, I'm going to be hanging a big flywheel off of there, which is going to have a clutch in it, which I'm going to be pushing. There's going to be a lot of forces back and forwards on the crank, and that end float of the crank is set with that bearing. One option would be to go 1, 2, 3, 4 and cut it here, which could potentially work, and it would be very simple, and then I'd have to put a plate on the back of the engine, bolt that to the back, maybe weld a plate on the back. I'd quite like to keep this end of the crankcase as well, so I kind of want to keep both ends instead of just chopping it here and having the V8. I can't cut between each cylinder because there's a main bearing in the case, a big web and structure inside the case, in between each bank of cylinders, there. So what I've decided to do is cut through the bore where the cylinders will go, where the pistons are. That is the best way to cut it. So I'm going to go for cutting on this line. So if I cut halfway through the third cylinder and halfway through this one, those two halves that are left will end up with that, which is a V8. This way I get to keep the cam drives and all the information at the front that I want, the big bearing that sets the thrust and the end float for the crank on that end. I've cut out 4 barrels and pistons and welded the 2 ends back together, and I'm left with a V8. That is my master plan, and I just need to make that a reality using angle grinders and welders instead of some paper, some sticky tape and some scissors. I would love to know your thoughts on what you think of this. I hope you agree that it's the best plan of action. There are a lot of things to talk about regarding alignment, but I've got a plan for that as well, but I think we'll get to that later. Doing it like this and cutting on the third set of pistons is helpful in the way that it staggers the joint. So this joint will be up one end, not too far up one end. I could cut it on the very last piston, but there's alignment issues with that, which I'd rather have 2 bearings to use as an alignment. So by cutting it on the third one, it pushes it far enough away that I can actually stagger the joint, because I'm going to have to do all of this again on the sump, on the bottom part. From the months I've had of thinking about how to do this, that is the best solution I've come up with. And I can't think of a better one, so I guess let's do it. I need to clear some space because I'm not going to be able to get the angle grinder in here to actually cut the case. Each barrel is held on with 10 studs and there's 12 barrels. So there's a lot of these threaded studs sticking out of the aluminium. So I'm double nutting them. I'm screwing one nut on, winding down a second nut, locking the 2 nuts together, then using the bottom nut to undo because it's locked into the nut above it, and that locking force will be tighter than the force holding the stud into the case. So something has to give. I'm really just making some space so I can get the angle grinder in there and make way for the cut. This is ideally where the join will end up, slightly offset so I can still utilize this stud and this stud. So this one really is going to end up being cut back here, but I'm just going a bit big for now and I can trim it back later. I'm going to just use my bog standard angle grinder to cut it before you all start shouting at the screen saying how inaccurate this cut is and I should be using a mill or any other way of doing it that's more accurate. If you think about it, the outer side of the case is just a raw casting. That isn't a machine surface, and that is not helpful at all for realigning to weld this back together. Everything really comes from that main crank center line where the main journals are, where the main bearings sit. That needs to be true and straight. What's happening with the rest of the case is important, but I'm definitely not relying on the two cut surfaces being cut straight to line up the case halves when I weld it back together. Before I can weld these case halves back together, I'm going to have to make almost like a mandrel that fits in to that main central spine where the crank would sit in all of those bearing housings all the way down. That's going to do two things. That's going to keep things dead straight and aligned, but it's also going to have shoulders on it. Those shoulders will set the spacing between the main bearings. Both case halves will locate onto it. I'll then bolt those to the bottom case half, and I could even put a barrel back in place and bolt that on to the flange on the top. That would help hold that all together. But really, the spacing and alignment is all going to come from this mandrel, which is going to run down the middle. As long as it allows enough room for the case halves to sit where they want to sit, even if there's a gap, that's really not even a big problem because it will be welded up anyway. All I'm trying to say, these rough cuts now with the angle grinder are perfectly fine because these surfaces are going to be trimmed back until it fits on that mandrel. I will admit this is hard to watch, such an old engine case being cut in half, but you've got to trust me, this is for a good reason. We're going to make the only running V8 Liberty in the world. There's only 3 Liberty V8s that exist in the world, and they're all stuck in museums, parked up, probably never to be run again. It's worth it, I promise you. It's done. I've just cut up the Liberty V12 and now I've just got quite a terrifying pile of bits of an engine case. Scary, not gonna lie. Worried about what you're gonna say, but please bear with me. We're gonna get there. We are gonna make it happen. Just lining up these two case halves now back together. Obviously they're still oversized, so the bore is oval sized because I've got a bit too much. I need to trim a bit more back. Just looks perfect. It's a V8 case. I'm so chuffed. I have been thinking, taking out 2 cylinders, the bit that I've actually cut out isn't massive. Is it worth it? Is it gonna make that much difference? But it really does. It completely transforms this block to now being a more manageable size. And the chunk that I've cut out is nearly half a gearbox worth, or the entire flywheel and clutch assembly and more. It's a huge bit of real estate that we've gained back so I can make this car as short and lightweight as possible. Now I've actually got this spare middle section. There was another chunk of that web that was missing, so I'm gonna cut one of the webs from this bit in the middle that I've got spare now and put that in. It's good practice for welding this material. And there's this other little tricky bit of damage on the lip, on the sort of flange around the edge. I don't know what's happened. At some point it's been snapped off. So again, I can now cut that square to a sensible shape and weld it in. It will all be still Liberty metal. This is just a little lip that actually the wooden sort of subframe, I guess, that supports the engine sits on. So it's important, but it's not a sealing surface. But it went really well. The material seems to be welding really nicely. The technique I've kind of got is clean it all up, V the edges, get a couple of tacks holding it in place, then go in with the die grinder and open it up quite a lot and get at least halfway through, maybe more, and then weld it up really nicely. But it was, even without filler rod, it was just, it was fusing together really nicely. Once it's ground down, it all looks really quite good and it's really strong. So I think I'm gonna now finish off that web on the other piece of the engine, and then that will be all the repairs needed done to this engine, to each half of it. Lovely sunny day. It's good. It's a nice day. I'm enjoying it. Let's hope this last repair goes well. Although I have a lot of components for these engines, I am still missing some pieces, mainly intakes and intake manifolds. If anybody out there has got or knows of anything Liberty based, whether it's tooling, literature, engine parts, water pumps, carburetors, anything to do with the Liberty engine, I am your man. So please get in touch via the Ranelagh website and the contact me section. Send me a message if you know of anything out there, because I am desperately in need. This is the damaged web. That's the new section in there. So I've got some final trimming to do on this half because that needs to meet there. So basically this little half circle will end up getting cut off and that will end up over there. So that needs to meet with half of that, you can imagine. There's about 15 mil that needs to come out still. And then that stud will be lined up with that. And that will be round. Well, there we go. We are a huge step closer to the Liberty V8. That's half of it there. The bulk of the work is done. All of the welding, the repairs, that little flange on the side, the web have all gone perfectly well. I'm a little bit more nervous about when it comes to doing the actual weld up and over, because that has all been exposed to oil. So that's slightly terrifying, but after the success we've had today, I think we're in good shape. And then of course I need to do exactly the same again to the other half of the engine, which is a different story because we've got oil pickups and returns and all sorts going on in there. But that is going to have to wait for another video because I've got to pack my things up, load the van and head back to the barn in Chichester to the repair shop. But I hope you've enjoyed another aero engine update. It's been a huge amount of work. Sorry, not tons of progress has been done, but it just takes a long time. I'm here on my own and I'm juggling, dealing with builders and doing power boards and everything else. That's what I'm going to go and do now, actually. Screw the board to the wall for the electric meter to be installed whilst I'm away. So I'm getting close to having power here. Then we can really start kicking off and things can happen. As ever, I always welcome any comments and any feedback and help. You are a very clever and helpful bunch and I appreciate all the help you can give. Make sure you've subscribed so you get the next update on this engine. And of course, huge thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video and supporting the channel. Go and show them your support by visiting surfshark.com/DomC or click on the link below in the description. Use code DOMC at the checkout and you can get 4 extra months completely free of Surfshark VPN. Thank you guys for watching. And we'll see you next time.